Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I reached for her hand, and she pulled away. Not with anger, not with fear, with the kind of casual dismissal you reserve for strangers. It happened on a Wednesday night, just after dinner. I had asked her a simple question, one I thought deserved a simple, human answer. "Are you okay?" I said. "I'm fine," she replied, without looking up from her phone. Then, after a pause, her voice, syrupy, cold, dropped the line that carved itself into my bones. "I don't owe you intimacy just because you're nice to me." She said it like she was explaining basic math to a slow student. No rage, no sadness, just pure, clean detachment. I stood there for a second, holding a plate in one hand, feeling the weight of that sentence slam into my chest harder than any slap ever could. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't plead or promise or even sigh. I just looked at her, at the woman I had built a life around, at the woman who now stared at her screen like I was a piece of background noise she didn't care to turn off. And then, quietly, without ceremony, I made a decision. That night, I stopped reaching for her. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of respect for her words. If intimacy was a currency, then I accepted I had gone bankrupt. If connection was a dance, then I realized the music had stopped a long time ago, and I'd been spinning in silence. So I put the plate in the sink. I rinsed it clean, and I left her sitting there in her glow of indifference, never once looking up to see the man she had just cut loose. That was the last time I tried to bridge the gap between us. The last time I thought love could be begged for, earned, or reasoned back into existence. You said you didn't owe me anything. I heard you. I believed you. And that night, I started learning how to live without you. The next morning, I didn't kiss her goodbye. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't a tactic. It was simply alignment. If she owed me nothing, then I owed her nothing back. The first few days, the changes were almost invisible. I stopped brushing my hand against her back as I walked by, stopped leaning in for that casual kiss on her temple before leaving for work, stopped asking if she needed anything when I went to the store. Small withdrawals. Tiny acts of self-respect disguised as indifference. At night, I started staying up later. Not by much. 15 minutes at first. Then an hour. Then 2. I told myself it was because I had work to do. Emails to answer. Podcasts to catch up on. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't want to climb into a cold bed next to a colder heart anymore. She noticed, of course. The human brain is wired for patterns, and when patterns change, it sets off alarms, even if we don't want to admit it. One night, as I was getting into bed well past midnight, she stirred and mumbled, half asleep. "You're late." I didn't answer. I just pulled the blanket over myself, my own blanket, the one I started keeping at the foot of the bed, and turned away from her. There was a time when I would have pulled her close, kissed the back of her neck, whispered goodnight. That time was gone. Now, the space between us grew an inch wider every evening. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was the natural consequence of being unwelcome in someone's orbit. In the mornings, I stopped waiting for her to wake up before making coffee. I stopped setting out 2 mugs. I drank alone, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling mindlessly through news headlines I didn't care about. I became quieter, smoother, less visible, not to punish her, but to honor her declaration. She didn't know me touch. I didn't know her presence. Day by day, the house grew heavier. Not loud, not chaotic, just heavier, as if the walls themselves were absorbing the silence, thickening it, pressing it down into the floorboards. And she kept moving through it, laughing at her phone, posting stories, texting friends, pretending she didn't feel it too. But she did, because no matter how many yoga classes she booked or how many smiling selfies she posted, you can't fill a house with noise when the heartbeat is gone. And I was gone, long before my body ever followed. It's strange how quickly the body adapts when the soul gives up. At first, it was little things. Separate blankets at night, different wake-up times, a growing list of invisible lines drawn across every room. I stopped waiting for her to come to bed, stopped glancing over my shoulder when I made dinner, wondering if she wanted to join me. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't spite. It was survival. I became air. She became a locked door. The spaces that once held intimacy, the kitchen, the living room, our bed, became neutral zones. Cold, sterile, untouched. She'd curl up on one side of the couch, scrolling through her phone, laughing at jokes she didn't share with me anymore. I'd sit at the kitchen table, headphones in, pretending to read an article I didn't even register. The living ghost of a man she used to love. The living ghost of a man she used to know. And she pretended not to notice. At night, when we used to wrap around each other instinctively, there was now a canyon. Wide, yawning, impossible to cross. I didn't reach for her. She didn't reach for me. And in the hollow silence between us, something colder than anger began to grow. Something irreversible. Touch is a language. When you stop speaking it, even accidentally, you forget how. There was a moment, a brief, flickering moment, when I brushed past her in the hallway on my way to the laundry room. She stiffened. A tiny, involuntary flinch. It hit me then. Even the idea of me reaching for her was foreign now. Unwelcome. So I stopped brushing past her too. No accidental hand grazes. No playful bumps at the fridge. No fingers fixing the stray piece of hair that always fell into her face. She was an island, and I was the ocean pulling back from the shore. Each time I withheld a touch, each time I chose absence over closeness, a small, invisible thread between us snapped. And she kept smiling, posting, laughing into the glow of her screen, pretending that the hollow in her chest wasn't growing bigger by the day. But it was. Because freedom, when misunderstood, isn't liberation. It's loneliness wearing a prettier mask. And the mask was starting to slip. For a little while, she looked lighter, almost relieved. She started posting more online. Photos from yoga class, close-up shots of iced coffee, smiling selfies with captions like "Healing isn't linear" or "Choosing myself every day." I watched it happen from across the room, the careful construction of a new reality. A world where she was thriving. A world where the silence between us didn't exist. Freedom looked beautiful on her from a distance. She threw herself into plans. Brunches, happy hours, workshops with women she barely knew. Outfits delivered in bright plastic bags at the doorstep. Always something new to wear, new to show. And when she came home, she was buzzing with stories about strangers, laughter that didn't touch her eyes. She thought she had done it, that she had broken free. From what? Exactly, she never said. But I knew. From expectation. From warmth. From me. And I let her. I smiled politely when she talked about her new energy shifts. I nodded when she mentioned her personal growth. I didn't argue. I didn't point out the hollowness of it all. Freedom, real freedom, isn't about shedding others. It's about carrying yourself with or without them. And deep down, she was still tethered to me. She just didn't realize it yet. The house began to change. Not physically, but atmospherically. Rooms that used to hum with life became still. Not peaceful, empty. The kitchen echoed. The bedroom chilled. Even the hallway felt longer somehow, stretched thin with the weight of words we no longer said. I could feel her noticing it in small ways. The way she lingered at the front door after coming home, keys jangling nervously in her hand. The way she paused in the living room, phone clutched like a lifeline, pretending to check something while her eyes darted toward me, and then away. I said nothing. I offered nothing. Because she had made herself clear. I don't owe you intimacy, she had said. And I had listened. I had believed her. At night, she'd scroll through her phone long after lights out, the soft flicker of the screen painting her face in cold, blue light. Sometimes she would laugh, loud, sharp, forced. Maybe for my benefit. Maybe for her own reassurance. I stopped wondering which. The distance between us wasn't growing anymore. It was finished. Permanent. One night, she came home later than usual, hair curled, makeup heavy. She dropped her purse with a theatrical sigh and glanced at me from across the room, waiting for something. Approval. Curiosity. Jealousy. I kept reading my book. Not out of cruelty. Not out of pettiness. Out of truth. She poured herself a glass of wine, snapped a picture of it, and captioned it, "Friday nights are for freedom." I watched her post it, watched her sip the wine alone at the counter, watched her glance over at me every few minutes, waiting for a reaction that never came. She was performing for an audience that no longer existed. The crowd had left. The curtain had fallen. And all that was left was the echo of applause that would never come. She didn't know it yet. Or maybe she did. Maybe deep down, she already felt the first frost forming around her. The truth is, you can scream into the void all you want. It won't echo back if there's no one left to hear you. And I was already gone. Freedom isn't running away from someone else. It's realizing you ran away from yourself, and no one is chasing you anymore. Touch used to be second nature. A hand on her back as I passed by, fingers brushing her hair away from her eyes. The simple weight of a palm resting on her knee during a movie. It was instinct, not effort. It was how I said I see you without speaking. How I said I'm here. But now it was something else entirely. Now, every touch felt like a lie I refused to tell. At first, it was subtle. I moved slightly to the side when we crossed paths in the hallway. I kept my hands in my pockets when we sat on the couch. I reached around her instead of over her when grabbing a coffee mug. And she noticed. Not right away. Not in some dramatic, gasping realization. But she noticed. There was a moment. Small, almost laughable in its intimacy. When a piece of her hair caught on her necklace, tangled against her neck. Months ago, I would have reached out without thinking. Untangled it for her. Tucked it behind her ear. Maybe kissed her forehead just because. But this time, I watched her struggle with it in the mirror. Watched her fumble, curse under her breath. Watched her glance at me. Once, twice, waiting for help. I stayed seated. Silent. Still. She freed it herself. And the silence that followed was deafening. You don't realize how much intimacy lives in the small things, until the small things die. Even the accident stopped. The casual brushing of hands when passing plates at dinner. The unconscious touch on the small of her back when guiding her through a crowded doorway. The hand extended to help her out of the car. Gone. I became an island she could not reach, no matter how close she stood. I saw it in the way she started to hesitate before walking past me. The way her arms curled tighter around herself when we sat in the same room. The way her shoulders tensed, waiting for something, anything, that never came. One evening, she dropped her keys near the front door. They clattered across the hardwood. I didn't move. Not even a flicker of reaction. She bent down slowly, picked them up, her fingers trembling slightly. She straightened, glanced at me, and there it was. The first crack. Not anger. Not defiance. Loneliness. She had built her wall so high, so thick, that when she finally turned around, she realized no one was trying to climb it anymore. One night, lying in bed, she shifted closer. Not touching me. Just closer. An inch, maybe two. Testing the air. Testing me. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't breathe any differently. I let the distance stay exactly where it was, measured in inches, but felt in miles. Eventually, she turned over, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. And I stared at the ceiling, feeling nothing but a cold, clean peace. Touch, I realized, isn't just physical. It's a contract, an agreement, a choice. And when one person breaks it, the contract dissolves. She broke it the night she told me she owed me nothing. I was just finally honoring the terms. She thought she chose freedom. What she chose was exile. And I was letting her live there. Alone. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. One of those quiet, forgettable days where the weight of routine feels heavier than usual. She found me in the kitchen, rinsing out a coffee mug. The late light stretched long shadows across the floor. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed loosely, pretending to be casual. "You've been distant," she said, her voice almost tentative. I didn't turn around. Didn't set the cup down. I just rinsed it clean, placed it carefully in the drying rack, and let the silence stretch. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. Almost kind. "I'm just listening to you," I said. She frowned, caught off guard. Listening to what? I wiped my hands on a towel, turned slowly to face her. "You said you don't owe me anything," I reminded her, voice low. "I'm just making sure I respect that." Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to argue, but no words came out. Because what could she say? She meant it when she said it. She wanted the freedom. The distance. I was simply giving her exactly what she asked for. When someone shows you who they are, you don't argue with them. You believe them. The days that followed were colder. Not in temperature, in spirit. Meals were eaten across separate islands of silence. Movies played in the background, ignored by both of us. Conversations became functional at best, brittle and businesslike. "We need more coffee. The rent is due next week. I'll be home late." It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was the quiet resignation of two people existing on opposite sides of a crumbling bridge. She started reaching, in small, clumsy ways. A hand brushing mine when passing by. A joke tossed half-heartedly across the room. A lingering glance that begged for something. Anything. to tether her back to the life she used to take for granted. But I didn't reach back. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Because there was nothing left to reach for. She had built a house without walls, a love without touch. And now she was shocked to find herself standing alone inside of it. One night, after another empty dinner, she set her fork down too loudly, flinched at her own noise, and muttered under her breath, "I feel like I don't even know you anymore." I wanted to laugh, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer tragic irony. Because the truth was, she never really knew me. She only knew the version of me that twisted himself into shapes small enough to fit her shrinking affection. Now, stripped of all the reaching, all the trying, all the desperate scaffolding of a man trying to be loved, she was finally seeing the real me. A man who had stopped chasing. A man who had learned that love, without mutual respect, is just slow self-destruction. And when the music stopped, I didn't beg for another song. I just stood up and left the dance floor. The reflection in the silent mirror was becoming too clear for her to deny. And for the first time, I think she started to understand. The worst kind of loss isn't sudden. It isn't explosive. It's slow, silent, inevitable. And by the time you realize what you've lost, it's already too late. The cracks started showing in the smallest ways. The burnt toast she scraped into the trash can one morning, a little too aggressively. The misplaced keys she swore she had left on the counter. The half-folded laundry abandoned in the basket for days. Tiny fractures. Hairline splits in the illusion she tried so hard to maintain. You don't notice a house is collapsing until the windows stick and the doors won't close right. That's how it was with her. The slow, sinking realization that freedom didn't taste the way she thought it would. It was bitter. It was dry. It was cold. Breakfast became silent affairs, her on one side of the kitchen island, me on the other. 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 people, and a canyon in between. Sometimes she tried to fill the space with noise. A casual, forced, almost manic tone. "Did you see that thing on the news? I'm thinking about repainting the bedroom. Maybe we should take a trip, just the 2 of us." I answered when necessary. Briefly, politely, but never warmly. Never with the eagerness she used to expect from me. Because my heart was no longer on the table. I had already packed it away. When someone withdraws from you, you don't notice the silence immediately. You notice the hunger. Not physical hunger. Not for food or touch. A deeper hunger. For being seen. For being wanted. For matching. And she was starving. The signs grew louder. She started lingering in doorways, waiting for conversation that never came. Started wearing the old sweatshirt of mine she used to steal when we first dated, hoping I would comment. Started cooking elaborate dinners on random Tuesday nights, setting the table for 2 even though she knew I wasn't coming to sit. I watched it happen. Quietly. Patiently. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. She was chasing echoes. Memories of a love she had casually declared she didn't owe anything to. And now, stripped of the scaffolding of touch, of words, of presence, she was collapsing under her own weight. One night, I came home late, later than usual, after sitting in the parking lot outside a coffee shop for an hour, just breathing, just existing somewhere that didn't feel so heavy. When I walked through the door, I found her sitting at the kitchen table. Dinner cold. Candles burned low. 2 plates, untouched. She looked up at me with wide, glassy eyes. "You didn't answer my text," she said quietly. I shrugged, setting my keys down. "Must have missed it," I replied, voice flat. Her shoulders sagged, the last bit of forced pride bleeding out of her. She wanted to say something. I could see it, feel it vibrating in the thick, stale air between us. But she didn't, because some part of her finally knew. You can't demand affection. You can't summon warmth with desperation. You can only receive it freely or not at all. And I had nothing left to give. The next morning, I found the sweatshirt she had worn, crumpled on the bed. Left behind like a white flag. A silent admission. She thought she'd won by declaring her independence. But what she didn't realize was that intimacy isn't a tax. It isn't a burden. It's a gift. And once you teach someone to stop offering it, you can't ask for it back. Not when the house is already hollow. Not when the heart is already gone. There's a desperation that only shows itself when the silence becomes too heavy to bear. She cracked one night, not with a scream, not with a fight, but with a whisper. I came home later than usual again. No excuse. No explanation. Just the steady, quiet drift of a man who had nothing left to prove. She was waiting in the living room. Lights dimmed. Music playing low, something soft, nostalgic, the kind of song you put on when you're trying to rewind time. She was wearing one of my old hoodies. The one she used to steal back when love lived between us in the small things. Dinner was set on the coffee table. 2 plates, 2 glasses of wine already poured. She stood up as I walked in, the sleeves of the hoodie too long, swallowing her hands. She gave a nervous little laugh and said, "Thought we could have dinner together. Just sit, you know? Like before." There was a tremor in her voice she couldn't hide. Not this time. I looked at the table. At her. At everything she had spent years convincing herself she didn't need. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw her not as she wanted to be strong, independent, untouchable, but as she truly was. Alone. Small. Fractured. But pity isn't love. And nostalgia isn't a reason to stay. I set my keys on the counter, slow and deliberate. Then I smiled, softly, almost sadly, and said, "I don't want to be intrusive." Her brow furrowed, confused. "Intrusive? What are you talking about?" I shrugged lightly. "You made it clear. You don't owe me anything. And I don't want to make you feel obligated to share space you don't want to give." I could see the words hit her like stones. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to apologize, but nothing came out. Because deep down, she knew. She had drawn the lines. She had built the walls. And now she was trapped behind them. I stepped around her, slow, careful, respectful, like walking past a stranger. She stood frozen in place as I moved through the house, gathering a few things: a book, a sweater, my phone charger. Simple, domestic movements that felt impossibly loud in the brittle quiet. I could feel her eyes on me the entire time. Waiting. Hoping. But I gave her nothing. No argument. No confrontation. No desperate attempt to fix something she had already burned to ash. When someone closes a door in your face, you don't wait outside forever. You find another way home. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time. No announcement. No conversation. Just the soft click of a door closing behind me. And somewhere in the house, I knew she was sitting there. Alone, cold, wrapped in a hoodie that no longer smelled like love. She had wanted space. She had demanded freedom. And now she had both. More than she ever knew she could handle. It didn't happen with a fight, or a slammed door, or a tearful confession. It happened the same way the seasons change, slowly, inevitably, without anyone really noticing until it's too late. I woke up early, before the sun, before the house started breathing its heavy, awkward breaths. I moved quietly through the bedroom, packing just a few things. The essentials, the irreplaceables, the pieces of my life that she hadn't already worn thin with neglect. No suitcases. No drama. Just a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a calmness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I stood at the foot of the bed for a moment, looking at her. Curled on her side, facing the empty space where I used to sleep. Even in her sleep, she reached for something that wasn't there anymore. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. You can mourn something long after it's already dead, but mourning doesn't bring it back to life. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a piece of paper from the drawer. The same drawer where we kept grocery lists, coupons, receipts for things we thought we needed. And I wrote one sentence. Simple. Clear. I respect your boundaries. Thank you for making them so clear. No signature. No flourish. No plea for understanding. I folded the note once, set it neatly on the coffee table, next to the 2 untouched plates from her last attempt to patch over a sinking ship. And then, I left. No slamming the door. No dramatic pause on the threshold. Just the soft click of finality. Leaving isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's about survival. The air outside was crisp, sharp against my skin. It smelled like rain and cold metal, like the start of something new. I got in my car, started the engine, and didn't look back. No last glance at the windows. No lingering thought about whether she would run after me. Because I knew she wouldn't. Pride would keep her rooted in place. Fear would keep her silent. And eventually, the regret would come. But by then, it wouldn't matter. By then, I would be gone. Some goodbyes are silent. Some exits are invisible. But their impact echoes longer than any shouted words ever could. And somewhere behind me, in that hollow, echoing house, she would wake up. Find the note. Feel the space I had vacated, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. The real punishment was never rage. It was absence. It was letting her feel the cold void she had unknowingly crafted with her own hands. And now, she would live in it. Alone. Exactly as she had asked for. Exactly as she deserved. Some people think intimacy is a right. That affection should come on demand. That love should sit patiently in the corner, waiting for them to feel like acknowledging it. But love doesn't survive in cages. It doesn't survive on leftovers. Love needs choice, willingness, presence. And when you starve it long enough, it dies quietly, without a funeral, without flowers. Just absence. You don't owe anyone intimacy, but you also don't get to control the consequences of withholding it. She thought that setting boundaries would protect her, that declaring her independence would make her untouchable. She was half right. She became untouchable because there was no one left willing to reach for her. Freedom has a price, and sometimes that price is loneliness. True loneliness. The kind that sits with you at midnight, when the glow of your phone isn't enough to keep the dark away. The kind that echoes in an empty kitchen. The kind that stares back at you from across a table set for two, with only one chair filled. I didn't leave because she rejected my body. I left because she rejected my soul. Piece by piece. Touch by touch. Word by silent word. Until one day, there was nothing left to fight for. Bonds are not obligations. But if you reject warmth long enough, don't be surprised when you freeze alone. I don't know what she's doing now. I don't care. Maybe she posts selfies with captions about new beginnings. Maybe she tells her friends a story where she's the hero. Maybe she sits quietly some nights, wondering when exactly the house got so cold. It doesn't matter. Because I am gone. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. In peace. And that's the kind of departure no one sees coming. Because they never believed you could actually walk away without looking back. But I did. And the silence I left behind? It was louder than any goodbye could ever be. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.